Hi, gang. Bob Boving here to bring you The Mystery Project. And tonight, the second part of our final Peggy Delaney story by James W. Nichol. Last week in part 1, Bernie scooped Peggy and Amber out of the city for the weekend. Kyra Harper stars in part 2 of Home Again, Home Again.
Hello there. You've reached Peggy Delaney, Toronto Tribune. If you have something confidential you want to pass on, just leave your name and number. The walls have ears. I'll get back to you. If you're calling to give me fulsome, unqualified praise for my columns, feel free now. If you're calling to scream at me, fascist, socialist, cop hater, cop lover, pro-lesbian, anti-lesbian, or anything else that strikes your fancy, go for it. After all, this is a quasi-democracy.
Okay, Mr. Lane. How about that light you said you saw in the barn on...
Look, I told the other police officer about that light and about everything else at least 3 times.
But you haven't told me.
Okay. Amber and I saw a light just after dark, the first night we arrived at Michael's house. It was kind of flickering. We pointed it out to Michael. He went out to the barn to check. Came back saying it was a reflection off a window swinging in the wind.
Friday night?
Yes, last night. And then this afternoon, about 3:30, Michael drove into Thornbury to pick something up.
And what was that?
A type of iron that creates steam and helps strip off old wallpaper.
There's nothing like that in his car.
There isn't? Well, that's what he said he was doing.
All right. Michael drives into Thornbury and returns?
Just after dark, about 5:30. Amber and Bernie and I saw the headlights of his car, it's an SUV, coming up the laneway. But instead of parking at the house, he stopped in front of the old barn. And then we saw the same light again, the one we'd seen last night. But this time it seemed to be moving through the barn.
So it couldn't have been a swinging window?
It looked like someone was carrying a light, and it was shining out between the spaces in the boards. That's what made it flicker. The 3 of us went out to see what was going on. The car was still running, so the headlights were shining through the open door into the barn. We could see Michael's tracks from the car through the snow. We followed them, walked down this alleyway between stalls and a long cement ledge with stanchions.
And the flickering light?
We didn't see it anymore. What we saw was something red glistening in the light from the car. Blood smeared on the cement ledge. And then we saw Michael lying there, his head split open. Dead.
And?
And?
There's blood on Mr. Snyderman's clothes.
Because Bernie held him. But we were scared, so we went back into the house, locked all the doors, and called 911. Then I called my friend, who's a Toronto homicide detective. He should be here any minute, if it stops snowing.
Why did Bernie hold him? Why not you?
Michael and Bernie they'd been with each other for about 3 months.
With each other?
That's right.
Hey, you.
Carlos.
How are you doing?
Oh, not so good. What took you so long?
I drove as fast as I could.
They've been questioning us for about 3 hours. Bernie is in the living room. Amber's in one of the bedrooms. Get us out of here.
Are we going home?
Not just yet.
The OPP want us to stay overnight here in Thornbury. They'll come around in the morning. Let us know when we can head back to Toronto.
How could they think that we had anything to do with Michael's death?
It's police procedure, Amber. They have to look at all the possibilities.
How you doing back there, Bernie?
Just tell me this is a nightmare, and I'll wake up soon and I'll be happy. I'm trying to remember Michael laughing or talking. I love to talk. But all I can see is his head all bloody.
Don't, Bernie.
And I put you in danger, and your mom in danger by inviting you up here.
Bernie, you had no idea what was going to happen.
I did, though. Not that anything like this would happen, but I knew something was going on with Michael. He was so calm, terrific in the city, and anywhere we traveled, except up here. Up here, he was obsessed with fixing that old house up, so he wouldn't rest for a second. He was liberating it from its past, he said. And then we'd fill it with our friends, and everything would be wonderful. That's why I invited you up here, to fill the house with our friends. Show him it didn't have to be finished for us to have a good time. He was so wired. I just wanted him to calm down, so I had an ulterior motive. And it could have cost you your lives.
Bernie, for one thing, we don't know that Michael was murdered. It could have been some kind of accident. And two, I don't think you knew who Michael really was. So how could you know what was going on?
Knowing that he couldn't or wouldn't tell me who he was doesn't make it any better. If I'd listened harder, paid more attention, asked the right questions, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Bernie, you're not psychic. We're going to find a motel. We're going to try to get some sleep, and we'll get through this together. Right? Right?
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Amber's fallen asleep. Bernie's still watching TV with the sound down. Well, he's just sitting there staring at it.
Amber said she'd look after Bernie.
They're great pals. It's good they're together.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean when you said you didn't think Bernie knew who Michael really was?
He called himself Michael Castle, but Friday night, last night, he got drinking and told us a man had been murdered in that house 20 years ago. This was news to Bernie.
Do you think Michael said that to scare you?
I don't know why he said it. I think it just came out. And then, when Michael was in town today, Amber found 3 old scrapbooks hidden in the piano. Newspaper clippings were tucked inside one of them from 20 years ago, all about this man who'd been bludgeoned to death in his bed. They said he had a 16-year-old son who'd been staying with relatives in Thornbury at the time of the murder. The son's name was Michael Bryant.
And you're thinking what? That Michael came up here 20 years later to buy his old house back?
The newspaper clippings said it looked like a robbery. The house had been turned inside out. Some money was missing from a church collection. Michael, the son, had been staying with his aunt and uncle. His uncle was driving him back home Monday morning, and that's when they discovered Michael's father had been murdered the night before.
Anything else?
Yeah. The family dog was running in and out of the wide-open front door. The man was killed in his bed. Why didn't the dog bark and wake him up? Unless the dog knew who the murderer was.
You're thinking that Michael...
Oh, I don't know. I'm just asking questions.
All right. Let's keep asking them. If Michael had something to do with his father's murder, then who murdered Michael?
An accomplice? Michael comes back. He buys the old family home, so what's he up to? That would make an accomplice nervous, wouldn't it? Maybe he thought that after all these years, Michael was feeling guilty. He might tell the police everything he knew.
Why do I have this feeling you have an accomplice in mind?
I don't. Well, not really. But there's a man named Ben who owns a house and general store on the old road up from Michael's, and he and his wife, Hilda, are the only people around for miles.
So?
They've lived there forever. So this Ben knows all about the murder 20 years ago. And Michael was aware of this, yet he and Bernie stopped in there all the time. The man knew what house they were going to, but he and his wife never brought that story up once. Never told Bernie anything, either about the history of that house or about Michael.
Maybe they were being discreet.
And maybe there was some kind of agreement between Michael and them. Michael told us they were the people who told him the story about the murdered man. And when I think about it, they acted kind of on edge when Amber and I were in the store.
What do you want to do?
Go back there tomorrow. Talk to those people. Try to find out what they really knew. First thing in the morning.
Okay.
Okay. Are you going to get into bed?
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
Peggy, when I was driving through all that snow tonight, all I could think of was getting to you and Amber as fast as I could. And I knew right then there was no real question of where I wanted to be or who I wanted to be with. Moving down to Halifax to be near Laura, it seemed to make some kind of sense, as long as I didn't ask myself how I really felt about it. I'll fly down to see her as much as I possibly can. I know she won't forget me. She'll still be my little girl. And she'll be fine. But I won't be unless I'm with you.
Want to know a secret?
Sure.
I would have gone crazy if you'd moved down there.
I'm right here.
Yes, you are.
Hello. Still a bit of snow out there.
Yes. You're Hilda, right? I met you Friday with Michael and Bernie when we stopped in to buy some...
Oh, yes, of course.
This is Carlos.
Good morning.
Morning.
Have you heard what happened up at the house?
Yes, I did, dear. I did.
Who told you?
Well, Ben. As soon as he saw the police and the ambulance and everything, he went right up there.
Where's Ben now?
Went into town at first light.
Thornbury?
That's right. Trying to find out more information. The police never say much, you know, and they've got the laneway blocked off. But, dear, you must know everything.
Not everything.
Well, all we know is Michael's dead. I don't know whether it was an accident or... What happened?
Well, the police don't know yet. It could have been an accident, or it could have been something else.
What? Murder? That's what Ben said. He said he just knew it, the way the police were acting and everything. Oh, God.
Well, now, we don't know that for sure. Hilda, Michael never even told us who he was. Not exactly.
Well, he was Ben's nephew.
His nephew?
Yes. We hadn't seen him for years, and then suddenly he shows up, visiting all his relatives, driving out to his old house. As soon as he discovered it was up for sale, he said he had to buy it. We didn't know what to think. His father had been murdered in that house 20 years before. Can you imagine? And he wanted to buy it and fix it up and live there.
He was calling himself Michael Castle. Bernie didn't know anything about him being from here.
Castle? We didn't know he changed his name. Michael did ask us not to talk about what had happened, because he said Bernie was squeamish, that he'd tell Bernie when they were more settled in.
Hilda, when his father was murdered, was Michael still living at home?
Well, not exactly. Michael and Todd, his father, never got along. Not since Michael's mother died, when Michael was, I guess he was 10. His father was a very religious man, too religious to my mind. When his wife died, he became even more devout. Poor Michael. I think Todd tormented him, particularly after Michael's, feminine side became more apparent. Michael tried to spend as much time as he could, either here at the store or staying over at Ben's brother's place in town. You see, there were 3 brothers. Ben, Alfred, who lived in town, and Todd. About 2 weeks before the murder, Todd whipped Michael with this old buggy whip. He'd found some pictures of men in Michael's room. So Michael was staying at his Uncle Alfred's place in Thornbury that night.
Did the police ever question Michael at the time?
Yes, they did. But, of course, Michael didn't have anything to do with it. He was just this frightened kid. He loved his father. When he was little, the 2 of them were inseparable. It was all just the saddest thing. And now Michael's gone, too. He came in here last night, you know.
Did he?
Yes, in the middle of the storm. He'd been in Thornbury looking for his Aunt Margaret, but no one was at her house and her car was gone. So he dropped in here to see if Ben or I knew where she was, but we hadn't seen her.
Who's Aunt Margaret?
The Aunt Michael always stayed with in Thornbury when he was young, Alfred's wife. But Alfred died a few years ago. Now there's just Margaret and Teresa.
And Teresa is?
Margaret's daughter, Michael's cousin. Oh, Ben, these folks, they think Michael must have been...
I know, I just heard. You were in here the other day.
With Michael, yes. Ben, this is Carlos.
Hello, Ben.
Hello there. So, you must know what happened.
Well, no, I don't. We found Michael in the barn. He'd either fallen and hit his head, or somebody had...
Done it for him.
Ben...
Well, that's what the police think. According to Ruby. She's a nurse at the hospital. She was on duty when the ambulance brought Michael in. I was just talking to her.
Hilda, did Michael say why he was looking for his aunt last night?
No, not really. Did he, Ben?
He just said he wanted to see her.
First thing this morning, I called their place again to tell them about Michael, but there was no answer. I guess they're still away.
Teresa lives with her mother, then?
Yes, Teresa's not that well. She's had nerve problems off and on.
She's a recluse. Doesn't go anywhere except with her mother.
Is she older than Michael? Or younger?
Well, she'd be younger. By about 3 years, I guess.
Why do you ask?
Oh, just wondering.
All his stories about his family in Montreal, how they understood and loved him. Now, it sounds like growing up was a nightmare for him.
Uh-huh.
Poor Michael.
Bernie, it might have been such a nightmare that Michael... That he
what?
It's possible Michael found a way to sneak back home in the middle of that night 20 years ago, and then return to his aunt and uncle's place here in Thornbury before anyone missed...
No. Michael wouldn't do that.
Why else would he buy that place unless it was because of guilt, Bernie? Trying to overcome his guilt, face his guilt, his demons, stripping off wallpaper, knocking down walls.
Michael did not kill his father, okay? I just want to know who killed Michael. Who was in the barn with that light?
We saw the light twice, remember? Friday night, Michael went out to check, came back, said it was just a reflection off a window. But he looked unnerved.
I remember him checking on it, but I don't remember him looking at...
He got drunk that night, and he told the story of the man being murdered. Not a very appropriate time to tell you, Bernie. Not with Amber and me there. But he was upset. He couldn't stop himself. And he wandered around the house all through that night, and as soon as the storm broke the next day, he drove into Thornbury to look for his aunt and cousin.
His aunt and cousin?
The relatives he was staying with the night his father was murdered. He went looking for them yesterday.
But according to Hilda and Ben, Michael couldn't find them. So then he drove back, up the laneway, and his headlights lit up the barn. He stopped the car, got out, and that's when he saw that same light in the barn again.
You're saying...
Teresa was 13 years old the night of the murder. Probably they were close to each other. Michael stayed there a lot. So, who did Michael see out at the barn Friday night? Who unnerved him? Why was he looking for his aunt, or Teresa, the next day?
Bernie, maybe there's a chance Teresa knows something.
If she knows anything, she knows more than me.
Hilda told me that Michael's aunt's name is Margaret Bryant. I looked up her address in the phone book. Bernie, do you want to see if we can find Teresa?
Yes.
It's a big house.
Uh-huh.
There's a car in the driveway. I thought Hilda said she'd called this morning and no one was home.
Someone's home now.
I think just Bernie and I should go up to the door. Better not to look like a posse.
All right. But we'll keep a close watch from here.
Good luck, Bernie.
Thanks, sweetheart.
Careful, Mom.
Don't worry about me.
Of course, we will, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay, here goes.
Maybe they don't know what happened to Michael yet.
Hi,
Hello.
are you Teresa?
Yes?
We're friends of Michael, your cousin.
I know you are.
Oh, good. How do you know we are?
Why else would you be here?
Ah, well, right. Could we come in just for a moment?
I don't think so.
Teresa, I don't know whether you've heard what's happened to
Michael? Is he dead?
Yes.
He's dead, Teresa. Michael's dead.
You're sad, aren't you?
Yes.
You loved him and he loved you. I know that.
I don't think I ever knew him, Teresa. He never told me who he really was. I'm just finding out. His name was Bryant, and he came back and bought the house his father had been murdered in. I know you know all these things, but I'm just lost.
He used you.
No, I wouldn't say...
It's okay to admit it. Are you sure you want to know who Michael really was?
Yes.
All right, then. I have my own part of the house. My mother lives on the other side. She's visiting friends this weekend.
Is she?
You can see I like a lot of soft cushions. This is my hideaway.
That drawing up on the wall, it looks like...
One of Michael's.
Ah.
He did that one when he was 14. He was always drawing our make-believe stories. We'd act them out, and then he'd draw them. That's the winged prince. See the wings on his shoulders and his feet? The winged prince was one of his favorites. Sit down, please.
Thank you.
So, who was Michael Bryant?
Please.
He was a chameleon, a trickster. The night his father died, I thought we were sneaking out to his house to rescue his scrapbooks full of his drawings. That's what he told me. We climbed out our bedroom windows in the middle of the night, pushed my father's car away from the house so no one would hear us drive away. When we got there, though, instead of sneaking into the house, Michael went into the barn. He came out with gloves and an axe. He said, "This is the night we slay the ogre for real, Teresa, and then I'll be free, and we can run away together and live with each other forever and ever."
Did he go into the house, Teresa?
Yes. I played with the dog and pretended I wasn't there. I was dreaming. And then I could hear him going all through the house, knocking everything over. He came out with this cash box full of money. We walked through the bush to the logging road and back to the pond. Michael put the gloves in the cash box. Then he threw the axe and the box as far as he could, out into the water. And we went home.
You never told anyone?
No. I held it inside all these years. But I got sick with it. And Michael just went away and lived his life. And I was sent to an institution, but I never said anything.
But Michael came back, didn't he?
Yes, about 4 months ago. He came to visit us, checking to see if I was as crazy as my relatives said I was. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I hardly paid any attention to him at all. I must have seemed crazy. I think he went away from here feeling very happy. When my mother was away on one of her trips, I'd take the car and drive over to Michael's property. I'd watch him from the old logging road, fixing up his house. Watched you too, Bernie.
Did you?
Oh, yes. I could tell how much you loved Michael.
And were you in the barn Friday night?
In the middle of the storm, yes. I knew someone would see my light, and Michael would come out to investigate. I wanted to tell him he had to confess what he had done to his father, because I couldn't keep the truth inside anymore. But as soon as he saw me, he turned back to the house.
And last night, Teresa? Were you in the barn again last night?
Yes. His car wasn't there, so I waited. Finally, he showed up. I stood by the doorway. He saw me, got out, followed me back into the barn. I told him he had to tell the truth, or I'd tell the police to dredge up the pond. He just smiled. He said, "Remember our games, Teresa? How we used to play in this barn?" And he climbed up the stairs into the dark of the loft. He called my name. I searched with my light. "Look higher, Teresa. Higher," he said. And then I saw him. He was standing on the crossbeam. He had his arms spread out. "Remember the winged prince?" he said. And he stepped off. I just ran. I knew Michael was dead. Bernie?
Yes?
I didn't want to keep another secret. I had to tell you what happened.
Thank you.
You've just heard the closing part of Home Again, Home Again, our final Peggy Delaney story by James W. Nichol. In the cast, Kyra Harper was Peggy, Katerina Scorsone was Amber, John Stalker was Bernie, George Bouza was Detective Carlos Szabo. With them were Derek Murchie as the OPP officer, William McFadden as Ben, Joan Gregson as Hilda, and Liza Balkan as Teresa. The music was composed and conducted by Milan Kimlicka and performed by Ray Parker, Kevin McKenzie, Rick Whitelaw, and Scott Alexander. The recording engineer was Wayne Richards, with sound effects by Matt Wilcott. The associate producer was Colleen Woods. Production and direction were by Bill Howell, the executive producer of the Mystery Project. Our coordinating producer is Barry Morgan. I'm Bob Boving, thanking you for listening and inviting your comments.